All right, we can get started here. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Megan Blackmore, and I'm a learning coordinator with the Invasive Species Council of BC. IAPP is a collaborative-based organization committed to reducing the spread and impacts of non-native species within BC. I'm joining you today from Kamloops, where I'm grateful to live, work, and play on the unceded traditional territory of the Secwepemc. So thank you for joining us today for this webinar co-hosted by the Integrative Vegetation Management Association of British Columbia and the IAPP, entitled Post-Launch Updates and Future Plans for InvasivesBC, BC's newly released invasive species database and mapping application. This webinar is approved in BC for 1 continuing education credit towards pesticide applicator certification. To qualify for the credit, you must participate in the entire webinar, including the quiz at the end. The quiz link will be added in the chat box immediately following the presentation and will remain open, and you'll be reminded again at that time to complete it. So this webinar is being recorded, and it will be available on the IAPP's Learning Center and YouTube channel later this month, so that everyone will have an opportunity to learn and also earn their CEC credits. The link to IAPP's Learning Center is here in the chat box. And for those who would like to watch the recording after the webinar, but don't need to earn any credits, the recording will be up on our YouTube channel. And so those are those links there. Oh. We'll add those links in so that you're able to access them during the presentation. And if you have any questions about the credits, you can reach out to Gwen Shrimpton at IVMA. And so now I'm sure you all are Zoom experts at this point, but if you are experiencing any technical problems with Zoom, please use the chat box and Anu, our tech support, will be there to assist you. In Zoom, you have the option to select speaker view or gallery view at the top of your screen, and we recommend that you use speaker view. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We will be taking time at the end of the presentation to answer questions, time permitting. If you do see your preferred question already in the Q&A box, you can click the thumbs up button to upvote it. This will bump it up the list. If we run out of time to address all of the questions, we will share the questions and the answers by email at a later date. And so at this point, I am pleased to give a warm welcome and introduction to Gwen Shrimpton, Executive Director of the Integrative Vegetation Management Association. Please enjoy the webinar, and over to you, Gwen.
Thank you, Megan. So this webinar is co-hosted by the Integrated Vegetation Management Association of BC and the Invasive Species Council of BC. And I'm coming to you from Vancouver Island, where I live, work, and play on the unceded lands of the Penelakut people. The IVMA is a recognized organization dedicated to the responsible practice of vegetation management throughout the province. Our membership represents diverse industries, including forestry, gas and electric utilities, railways and highways, and invasive plant management. The IVMA is the credit coordinator for the Ministry of Environment continuing education program for the recertification of pesticide applicators for the forestry, industrial vegetation, including noxious weeds, and aerial categories. You must be a member of the IVMA for us to track your credits. Information on this program, as well as how to become a member of the IVMA, can be found on our website at ivma.com. We plan to enhance the opportunities for obtaining credits by holding these webinars. This webinar will qualify you for 1 credit in British Columbia. Unfortunately, there are no credits for Alberta for this webinar, but often our webinars have credits for both BC and Alberta. So in order to get this credit, you must provide us with your pesticide applicator certificate number when you registered for this webinar, and stay for the entire presentation, and your attendance is tracked with our computer software. Answer the quiz at the end of the webinar. You actually don't need to pass the quiz, but you do need to answer the questions so we know that you've paid attention and you've stayed to the end. And you have to do all that in order to obtain your credit. So right now it is my pleasure to introduce, we have 2 webinar presenters today, Crystal Chadburn and Brennan Webster. Crystal is a professional agrologist and has worked in the field of invasive plant management in British Columbia for over 18 years. She is the Senior Invasive Plant Specialist with the BC Ministry of Forests, where she helps lead a team of invasive plant specialists and technicians and supports strategic initiatives and policy development for invasive plant management throughout the province. Crystal is a member of the British Columbia Inter-Ministry Invasive Species Working Group and a director on the IVMA Association of BC. Brennan has been working for the BC Ministry of Forests Invasive Plant Program since 2019. He is now the program's invasive species data specialist. Brennan has been involved with the development of InvasivesBC for the past couple years and was a key member of the team leading the transition from the former invasive alien plant program database over to the new system. So welcome, Crystal and Brennan.
Great, thank you so much. I will share my screen here. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you again about InvasivesBC, our invasive species database and mobile application. I'm actually coming to you today from Lillooet, and I am honored to be welcomed into the St'át'imc territory on the unceded lands of the St'át'imc peoples. So today is going to be, I understand that there's kind of a mixed audience, potentially some of you who have not been using InvasivesBC, are not familiar with it, all the way up to users that have been entering records all season and kind of want to have more detail and more information. So hopefully this will balance a little bit of kind of the overview of what are we talking about, what is the system, as well as dig into some of the details for our more experienced users. So today I'll go through the what is InvasivesBC, the general overview, focus on a few of our frequently asked questions. Then I'm going to hand it over to Brennan, and he's going to talk a little bit about the extracts and reports, which we haven't really focused on in any of our training sessions to date. And then we'll close with what are we working on right now, what's coming next, and then hopefully there'll be some time at the end for question and answer period. And of course, if there's questions afterwards, you can send them in, and we will try to get back to you on answers for those. So let's start with what is InvasivesBC. Hopefully most of you are now aware that InvasivesBC is our new invasive species application. It's a shared data set for invasive species information across BC. It includes observation, treatment, efficacy, and long-term monitoring records. It covers both invasive plants and eventually will also cover invasive animals. We launched with the web-based platform for data entry this spring for data entry, viewing, and analysis, and are currently working on the mobile application for direct data collection and entering that data in real time in the field, which will be coming soon, and I'll touch on that. And what's really exciting is that mobile app is being built to have both offline and online functionality so that users can use it even when they don't have a Wi-Fi or data connection out in the field. So InvasivesBC did replace the former provincial invasive alien plant program, which was lovingly known as IAPP from 2005 to 2023. And it served us well, but we needed a modernized system that more accurately tracks the invasive species occurrence data through polygons, as well as those management actions associated with the invasive species locations. So users began the switch from using IAPP to InvasivesBC this June. We officially launched InvasivesBC on June 12th of this year. To date, that's only about 4 months since we launched, and we already have almost 15,000 records entered as of yesterday's count, and we have over 350 users registered to date. So thank you so much for the broad uptake. I know you were kind of forced into it with archiving IAPP and launching InvasivesBC. And we absolutely recognize that the learning curve and the kind of the shift and the growing pains from moving from a point-based system, which was IAPP, to an InvasivesBC system, which is a polygon-based system, has been challenging for some folks, and we hope that you have received the level of support that you need, and we will continue to provide that support, both Brennan and I, as folks get used to the new system and as we continue to build and work out any kinks. And so just a reminder on that is InvasivesBC is launched as part of what's called an agile release process internal to government. It's the new term. And what that means is an initial launch happens with kind of the very minimum viable requirements to function for base functionality. And then we continue to add to that. And just like any other app on your phone, you'll receive, it receives regular updates, bug fixes, and enhancements and features added. So we have a development team that has not gone away since launch. They're still working extremely hard behind the scenes to add all of the other wants and needs that folks have been asking for. So we are still more than welcome any sort of additional feedback. And, man, it would be cool if it did this. We're happy to receive some of that. And then we kind of sort through all of the wants and needs to decide kind of the priority level. Is this a must-have right now, or is this a nice to have in the future? So it's kind of exciting to have a ongoing excitement of new features that'll continually be added. And just a comment that InvasivesBC, although it replaced IAPP, it does not replace the Report Invasives mobile app, which is also available for use in BC. This is an app that was developed more for public reporting. It just has occurrence data and a size estimate and a photo, and it takes your current location from your device. And those come in through emails to our team and members of the Interministry Invasive Species Council, or Species Working Group. And then we put that information into InvasivesBC. So InvasivesBC is more for the practitioners, the more detailed observation and management data, whereas the reporting app is for general reports. This is a screenshot of what the system looks like. It can be accessed through invasivesbc.gov.bc.ca. And you can see here all of these donuts, we call them. These are showing the InvasivesBC records, and the colors on the donuts and the numbers associate to the number of records in those areas. So as you zoom in, those donuts shift as they get closer in, and you can see the green are the observations, yellow are treatment records, blue are monitoring, and then some of the donuts have a little purple sliver, which are the biocontrol records. So lots of records and pretty I would say extensive use throughout the province, which is great to see. Along the top there, you can see some tabs, and I'm not going to have time in today's webinar to go through each of the tabs and how they work, but there's a home tab, a training tab, which I will talk about, recorded activities tab, which is where you do most of your actions, including submitting new reports and zooming in and filtering through the different records, making things different color on the map, uploading KMLs, etc. The current activity page is where if you've opened an InvasivesBC record, it has all the details. The current IAPP site is if you've opened up a former invasive alien plant program record, you can view all of those and search and filter through the system. The batch uploader tab allows you to upload through an Excel schema a large quantity of records at once. And then we have the reports page, which Brennan's going to spend a bit more time on today. And then there's the admin page, which most users won't see on their screen. So InvasivesBC includes that web-based system that is accessible through the Chrome browser right now, and the mobile app will be released at a future date, which I'll talk about. Again, we have launched with invasive plants forms only, but invasive animal forms and functionality will be coming within the next year or so. We have the ability to view, extract, and filter by the full IAPP database. So those sites cannot be edited anymore, but you haven't lost any of that data, of course, which is important. It is all accessed through InvasivesBC. We have a handy map with the ability to find and track your location, upload KMLs, turning on and off commonly used warehouse layers, such as the RFI layer to show jurisdiction of highways, etc. And we can filter for both the InvasivesBC, the new data, and our IAPP data sets to view on the map and turn things different colors, etc. We have the ability to pull extracts and reports from both the IAPP and InvasivesBC data sets. When we launch, those have to be extracted separately because they're two different data sets for now and looked at kind of merged outside of the system. But as Brennan will mention, he is working on the ability to hopefully be able to do a report to pull from both data sets. And here's just a summary of the record types that are available in InvasivesBC. We have observations, both terrestrial and aquatic. Treatments, we've got chemical and mechanical and biological treatment record forms. We also have another section of additional biocontrol forms, biocontrol collection form, and a biocontrol dispersal monitoring form. And the dispersal monitoring form is where those biocontrol agents, those insects primarily are found where they weren't released. So to track how they're spreading over time. We also have 3 monitoring forms that are the only type of form that get linked to another form. And so we have a chemical treatment monitoring form that gets linked to a chemical treatment form, mechanical treatment monitoring, and biological release monitoring. And those are designed specifically to track the efficacy of the treatment itself, not to add in any sort of contractor compliance monitoring or, was compliance with the pest management plan followed. That's kind of on your own contract files. These monitoring forms are specifically to track that efficacy of the treatment method. And soon to come, we will be developing an aquatic biocontrol form as well. Batch Uploader, as I mentioned, has the ability to upload the geometries, the polygons, through an Excel schema, which is pretty cool. It came with some growing pains because we found after launch that a lot of folks were only collecting point data, and InvasivesBC doesn't accept point data, so we were able to the developers were able to very quickly make a pretty cool way that folks were able to upload their point data along with an area. And for this year only, we are able to have the system create kind of fake polygons based on the area that are all circles. So that was a bit of a workaround through the transition period that we hope folks are getting used to collecting polygons for future years. And once that mobile app is released, that will streamline that ability to be able to collect accurate polygons as opposed to point data that creates a kind of a fake polygon based on the area. So requesting access for anybody new here listening in. If you go to invasivesbc.gov.bc.ca, you'll come to this page and users can see the home page, a training page, and the public facing map. And if you click on the request access page, you will get this form. A business BCE ID or a government IDER is required. So get that first. And once you have that, you can fill out the form. It is really important that you fill out the correct funding agencies. Those are anybody you work for, anybody who's funding the work, as well as make sure and you can choose more than one there. Make sure you have the right employer, if applicable, your pesticide applicator's number or your service number, and then your requested roles within the system. And the reason those are important to keep up to date is because they autofill and into the forms when you're filling them out, and may the role itself is based on what functions you're allowed to do. If that changes and you start working for a new company or you get additional funding agencies, you can quite easily, once you're logged in, click on the little person icon on the top right hand, click on the Update My Info button, and update anything that's changed for your account information. And initially, when we launched, we were telling users just to check back within a couple of days to see if your access had been granted or not. But now we do have the auto email confirmation. Once Brennan has approved your access, you get the email. So there's no kind of wondering whether or not you have access yet or not. So the public facing map was not available when we first launched. So this is something new since June. And this is just version 1 so far. So we don't have the filtering abilities yet. That's to come. But if you go onto the map, public facing map page, the full IAPP and InvasivesBC data sets are there. And the InvasivesBC one is updated in real time. So it's always up to date. And if you zoom in there, you can actually see the labels that tell you whether it's an IAPP site, the site number, and the species once you get zoomed in. So it is a bit clunky right now. It's version 1, just so that there was something available for people who don't have access, who just want to look at what's mapped in an area. And they can do that. They cannot open the records. They cannot see any of the treatment data because it is public facing. And soon, we will be adding, but they can turn on some commonly used layers as well to kind of see BC Parks jurisdiction or a variety of different regional district boundaries, etc. And soon we will be adding the same filtering and sorting, the what's here, the find me functionality that's on the main map within the system. So that's to come. We just wanted to get version 1 out. We're also working very hard to get the InvasivesBC layer into the BC data catalog. We've got a lot of questions about that. Some folks don't want to use the actual system. They just want to pull the layer and put it into their own systems. So that has been in place for IAPP, and that'll remain in there, and it's updated every night at midnight. And very soon, we hope to have that InvasivesBC layer showing as well. So folks would need to pull the IAPP and the InvasivesBC layer into their systems. And ideally do that quite frequently because, as I say, it is updated every evening. We also have training videos, which are available whether or not you're logged in. So if you're just curious if this is going to be something for you to use, and because I don't have time today to go through the quite large amount of features, I recommend that folks watch these videos, and they should give you a pretty good overview. We do hope to add more training videos, and if there's certain specific things that folks want to see, please let us know. We've just been busy with kind of helping people through the transition and supporting users, so we haven't been able to add any additional training videos in a little while. And then the last kind of background information I'll provide to potential new users is on the Interministry InvasivesBC's working group website. We do have an InvasivesBC page, and if you click on the resources link here, sublink, you have a reference and training manual, which goes through a lot of the functions as well as kind of the theory and best practices of data entry behind that. It also has a very big appendix that explains every single field and how to fill that out and what all the different options in any drop-down menus means. And then we also have a bunch of kind of fillable PDF forms that folks could use if they're out there and want to collect data and make sure they're getting all of the right fields. And then when they come back to the office, they can enter those based on what they filled out on their iPads. So shifting a bit more to those users who are more familiar with the system, I'm going to run through quickly some of our frequently asked questions, and hopefully this is helpful to some folks. So question number 1 is, why is it glitchy when I'm trying to type into text fields in the forms? I personally have experienced this and was happy when we figured out that it was because our find me function on the map, which finds your little blue dot and tracks where you are on the map, it is constantly pulling your location, so it slows down the ability to type. So if you open up a form and you find yourself using the find me, button, you just have to turn that off before you continue filling out your form, and then no glitchiness. The other kind of weird thing that happens is, where is the button on the reports page to download the reports? And the Metabase software that we use on our reporting page just for some reason hides the download button until you hover over it. So it will always be on the top right-hand side of the table where all of the fields or all of the records are shown. Brendan's going to go through how you filter down, but if you hover over it, it appears. So it's kind of a secret little button. The other question we have gotten a few times is, I saved a record, but now I can't see it in the recorded activities table or on the map. And commonly we find that folks have saved the record using the save button, but have not clicked the submit to database button. So records need to be saved, and once you've saved it without errors, this activates this button and you're able to click submit to database, and only then is it viewable in the tables and on the maps. Another question is, how do I view multiple overlapping records? This one's a little bit more complicated to explain, and it's something we're very aware of and we always knew would become challenging for some users when we have years and years of data over top of each other, and even in 1 year you have an observation and a treatment and potentially a monitoring record all in very close to the same geometry. And so Brennan will talk about how the reports deal with that. But as far as viewing it on the maps, there's 3 options. We can use our What's Here button. We can use the boundary filter through the KML or the boundary uploader, or we can use the new record set feature. And I'll show you each of those one at a time here. So this is the What's Here feature. It's this little icon in blue here over on the right on the map page. And all you need to do is click and drag to make your square. And I encourage you, when you're looking at the question of what's happened in this general area, when you pull up to the field or you're looking on your map from your office and you want to know everything that's happened in an area, make sure you're including the closest IAPP site, because remember, the sites, anything that happened within an IAPP site within 100 meter was attached to that one site. So now InvasivesBC records might be all down here because they're more accurately in the area that the weeds actually are, or the invasive plants actually are. But this IAPP site likely has historical data associated with the invasive plants that are found here. So if you click your square and you include the IAPP site as well as the InvasivesBC records, it opens up a little box and you can see the InvasivesBC records here. And if you hover over any of these activity IDs, it actually highlights the record and shows you which one you're talking about. So you can see in this example, there's been 2 observations, probably 2 different species, different reported areas, quite different, a treatment of probably this species, and then a monitoring record. And if you click on any of these, it'll open up in the current activity page. In addition, if you click on this little circle target icon here, that's how you can see any of the IAPP records within the boundary that you've chosen. So then you can see everything that's happened before June of this year and in this location. The other way that you can do that is create a boundary filter. So these functions up on the map here, you can use your drawing tools, draw however big of a boundary you want. It prompts you to give it a name. And then you click this to pull up the records tables over top of the map. You go to the InvasivesBC activity table, you click the boundary filter button here and choose the boundary that you just created. And when you click the save and apply filter button, it actually filters down to only show you those records that are within what you drew. And then you're able to extract those or open them up or scroll along to the right here to see the details of those records. Lastly, you can create new record list layers if you want to show observations in a different color than treatments, for example. So anytime you click this new record list layer button, it opens up this prompt. Do you want to make an IAPP one or an activity, which is an InvasivesBC record layer? And then down below, you can see you can create them, you name them whatever you want. As an example, I put observations and treatments. You can turn those different layers to show in different colors to show as different color layers on the map. And then each of them you can filter down to whichever you want those data sets to be. So if you want it just to be observations, or you want it to be just a certain invasive plant. And right now we can only filter down by one item per field, one species per data set, or one activity type. But we've just finished building and will be released relatively soon the ability to do multi-filtering here, which is much needed. Next question, how do I edit a record submitted by someone else? So say your summer staff or your contractor and you want to make a change as the manager. Currently that is not possible in InvasivesBC. Only the account that submitted a record can edit a record other than administrator accounts. So that said, the need to be able to link those accounts and have data managers be able to edit their staff or their data entry levels from their same agency is identified and on the list for future releases. Next question, how do I know when to use an aquatic form versus a terrestrial form? In general, aquatic forms are used for true aquatic species, you know, right in the middle of a lake, those real yellow floating heart, for example, or where riparian species are located below the high water mark. So InvasivesBC has both a terrestrial and aquatic list. Species like the knotweeds or common tansy, they're on both lists because they can live in both terrestrial and riparian habitats. Question, how do I link a treatment to an observation like I used to do in IAPP? You don't. Unlike IAPP, treatments are not linked to observations, and we'll see a bit more about that when Brennan provides his information about the reports. The records are just submitted independently with the geometry, the polygon of where you did that activity, where you did the observation or where you did the treatment. As I mentioned earlier, the only records that get linked is monitoring records to treatment records. How do I enter 0 hectares for the area for a negative occurrence? So we've had a few conversations with folks on this one. And the actual polygon, because in IAPP, there wasn't the ability for a negative occurrence. There was just one type of survey, and we had the ability to put 0 hectares to indicate no weeds found. With InvasivesBC, we have a positive occurrence field in the forms or a negative occurrence field in the forms. So the polygon associated with that observation record is the same regardless of it, whether it's positive or negative. And for a negative observation, that polygon that autofills the area, that's indicating the area you looked. Because you've clicked negative occurrence in the form, that already tells the system that there's no weeds there and that the amount of invasive plants is 0, but the area is actually the area that you looked associated with that. And so linking to that, we've had questions about how can you batch upload your negative occurrences? They absolutely can be, but in that area field, it can't be 0 hectares. It has to be the area you looked. And if you didn't record that information this year because that was a bit confusing to some folks, you can just put, you know, the area that it used to be, if there was weeds there last year, or you can use a 1 hectare for this year. But the idea is to show the area that was searched and the invasives were not found. How do I decide whether to create 1 record or multiple records for patches of the same species in an area? So this is another larger discussion, which I'm going to go very quickly through, but reach out to us if you want to talk. But if you have a situation like this, the question is, do I make 1 big observation record or 1 big treatment record around all of these plants, or would I make 3 records, for example? Anytime patches have more than 100 meters between them without that target invasive plant, you would make 2 different records. That's the same rule that we followed in IAPP. If the density or distribution of patches are quite variable, you might want to do a patch here where it's more dense versus another occurrence over here if it's significant. And lastly, depends on the management goals. So if the management goal warrants the extra time to create those extremely detailed records, InvasivesBC enables that. So sometimes for provincial early detection rapid response species, we will want to map out every single species. But for more established species, it might be enough to just do one record and use that density and distribution to show the area or show the state status within that record. And perhaps the most commonly asked question, and why I would bet 75% of you are here today, is when the heck will the mobile application be released? So we did make a decision last year to release with the web version first, make sure that's standing up and get people familiar with it, and then we would launch the mobile application. So our goal is still to have that mobile application available with that offline capability for use as soon as possible, and hopefully in time for next field season. I know that it really impacts how you set up your external data collection systems. You need to know whether this is coming or not. And all I can say is I promise you, we will tell you as soon as we know. The exact timelines depend on the next month or so of testing and the workload for additional bug fixes. So anytime something happens with the web, we have to fix that, of course. Anytime, and that's not because of our developers, but when things change within government or something's found, that takes priority. But I can commit that communication will continue via email over the winter months. And the second it is available for use, it will be launched. There is no kind of, oh, it's ready, but we're holding off. Absolutely not. That as soon as it is ready for folks to use, it will be released. And as I said, the goal is still to get it ready and available for you this winter. Users should expect the mobile app to look and feel very similar to the current web application. So folks are like, well, what's it going to look like? How's it going to work? Almost exactly the same. The only real change is the ability for touch. We're doing some work on the touch buttons versus clicking with a mouse, and the offline and caching capabilities. So being able to work very quickly on mobile devices without a data connection takes a lot of coding and development time. But as far as, you know, your questions about how will I use it, it's the same. It's the same as you would use the web-based app through Chrome if you're connected to data standing there in the field using Chrome on your iPad. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Brennan now to run through some more detailed information on the InvasivesBC reports page. And there he is. I will mute myself. And I guess I'm still driving the slides here, so you can just let me know when you switch slides.
Yeah, I'll tell you when to click. Hi, I'm Brendan Webster. I'm the invasive species data specialist for the invasive plant program. I'm joining you from Castlegar, where I'm grateful to live and work on the unceded traditional territories of the Silts, Sinaiks, and Ktunaxa peoples. I'm gonna just run through mostly the reports today and just show you some of the functionality. This is mostly done by me. This is most of what I've worked on in InvasivesBC. So first way to extract data is on the reports page, which is what you're looking at right now. This is the reports page. Every report is in its own subsection in this drop-down menu. So right now there are three. There's IAPP, InvasivesBC, and spatial reports are the three subheadings in this drop-down right now. We use a tool called Metabase, which is a business analytics tool to embed the reports on this page. For people who have used IAPP before, the reports are in the same form as IAPP was. It's just tables extracted from the database. You just get like an Excel file download with like one row per record in the database and summary columns of each of them. So on the reports page, everything from IAPP is still available. You might notice if you go through the extracts, there are a few little things that have been changed. There were some useful columns that were missing in the old IAPP extracts, like who created the record, who updated it last, and like when they did it, and also things like agent counts on the biocontrol extracts. So I've added some of those, so there are a few more useful columns now. Everything that was in IAPP is on InvasivesBC, with one exception. Some people might remember there were protected sites that would hide the coordinates from you. Those records aren't in there. So there's like a few hundred sites maybe that were protected, and they're not right now in this database. They will be added once we build a way to hide the coordinates like they were in IAPP. So if you see a missing site, that's probably why. Just like the IAPP data, all the InvasiveBC form types have their own report. So Crystal went through earlier, there are 12 form types. So in the InvasiveBC section, you'll see 12 reports, one for each form. And then in addition to those are the spatial reports. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. Next slide. So this is what a report would look like when you view it on the embedded Metabase reports. So Metabase has built-in filter widgets, which are like sort of customizable. So that's what you see at the top there. Site ID, site paper file ID, those are all things you can use to filter the data before you try and download it. There are different types of widgets. You can tell based on the icon what type they are for the most part. There are like number widgets where it just accepts a number and filters for that number. There's like a checkbox list type of widget, which most columns will use, and it's for like fields that have repeatable values. So things like invasive plant, if you were to try and filter by invasive plant, you would see a list of invasive plants, and you can checkbox, you can select multiple. So that's actually something to note, is on the recorded activities page, if you're trying to extract stuff, right now you can only filter by a single plant. But if you wanted to filter by a bunch of plants, it might be better to do it on this reports page. There's also a date widget. Has a few different functions. You can do before a certain date, after a certain date, between two dates, within a certain month, or like on a certain day. So it has a few different ways it can work. You'll notice actually in this screenshot, there's two jurisdiction widgets, and that's because they work differently. I've made them work like a little bit differently. So jurisdiction list will show you a list of every combination of jurisdiction. So people who are familiar with IAPP will know you can have multiple jurisdictions on a site. So it can be 50% Ministry of Forests, 50% private, and really kind of an endless combination of jurisdictions. So the list version, you can select any of those combinations. So an example of when you would use that is if you want, just like in the screenshot right there, just 100% municipality owned land, then you would check that box. But if you wanted any combination of jurisdictions that have municipal land, then you would use the list one, because then you could just type municipality and it would return every combination. So that's why there's two widgets. Yeah, I set it up that way just to avoid, otherwise you have to check basically an infinite amount of boxes to try and get all the jurisdictions you want. So it's useful in that way. One thing to note actually is if you're using the list, sometimes you'll click on the widget, it won't show you the list right away. That's usually because there's a lot of values in the list, and Metabase doesn't want you to show, or doesn't want to show you a list of like 1,000 things. So you have to start typing to make the list populate. So if you went and did the invasive plant one, for instance, it wouldn't show you any plants at first, but if you started typing like SPO, it would start showing you like spotted hawkweed, spotted knapweed. So sometimes you have to start typing to make the list start populating. Yeah, and I recommend using the filtering widgets to filter your result set. Like technically, if you click the download button, you can download the whole thing at once. It'll take a while though, and the file size will be huge. It'll be like 500 megabytes or something. So it's useful to use the filter widgets before you try and extract it, just to keep it quicker and keep the file size down. Yeah, once you filter down, I guess Crystal sort of mentioned the cloud icon with the arrow in it is invisible unless you're hovering over the table. So like in my screenshot, it's invisible because I wasn't hovering my cursor over the table. So you just got to hover, it'll appear. And then, yeah, there's 3 options, CSV, XLS, or JSON you can download the file with. Next slide. Okay, so the other way you can extract data is on the recorded activities page. It's all linked to the same reports. So everything that's on the reports page, you can get the same reports on the recorded activities page. It's the same reports, same columns, same data, minus the spatial reports. The difference between this page and the Metabase page is as you filter on this page, you can see the changes on the map, and you can also use spatial filters on this page where you can't obviously on the Metabase page. So yeah, if you want to use a spatial filter, like an area of interest, I would do it on this page. If you don't, I would use the Metabase page, because this page also, it doesn't have the same amount of columns to filter by as Metabase does, just because it would, to have the whole table under the map would be like super cluttered. Like there's way too many columns. So we've put like a few like important columns that you can filter by, and some of them are left out. So on this page, you have the 3 default record sets: my drafts, InvasivesBC activities, and IAPP records. You can't extract reports for your drafts. There are no reports for those. So, but for InvasivesBC data and IAPP data, there's the download CSV button above the record set, and beside it is a drop down where you choose the type of report. One thing to note is if you filter something in your record set, but it doesn't, like, you could say, as an example, if you filter jurisdiction just on jurisdiction and you want private land sites or something, it will filter that down for you. But if you then pick terrestrial plant observation and extract it, any treatments that are in the result set still are ignored. So you have to, for each type of record, you need to use that report to download it if you want to get those records. So that, I'm not sure if that confuses anybody or not. Actually go back, sorry. Yeah, so the main benefit of this page is using spatial filters. There's 2 ways right now that you can do it. One way is, and the simplest way is, you can just draw a shape. So there's draw tools. I think they're in Crystal's screenshot, just in the top left. You can draw a shape. It prompts you to give it a name. You give it a name, and then you pick that name in the boundary filter dropdown, and you'll see the changes on the map. The other way is you can do a KML upload. It's right above the draw tools. Same thing, you click it, choose your file, upload it, and then pick it in the dropdown for the boundary filter. Some things about that, there's a 10 megabyte limit on KMLs. That's pretty big. I guess feel free to send me an email if you have a KML that's bigger than that you actually want to use. 10 megabytes is kind of a huge KML. I think that's probably a good limit. It also only accepts KML and KMZ files, nothing else. And as of right now, it only will accept polygons. There's some work being done to also make it accept lines and points. So that is a future feature that is coming.
Oh, sorry, Brennan. It looks like you got muted accidentally.
Oh.
Sorry, you're back.
Yeah.
I'm gonna move to the next slide, just though I'm watching. We only have 8 minutes left, so
yeah, some of my last few slides are actually pretty quick. I just want like a visual to explain some things. Yeah, actually, you can go to the next one. So the other type of report besides IAPP and InvasivesBC is the spatial reports. So InvasivesBC is a Postgres database with PostGIS. So we can do a bunch of GIS analysis on the shapes and the data that people are entering. The main type of spatial report is total area summary. So there are a few different ones. There's it's all grouped by individual species, and then also by jurisdiction, regional district, regional invasive species organization. And those are the 3 right now. Actually, there's 4. There's also just total province. And that just gives you a summary of the total area, like in each area. And it just, like in the screenshot, it's just in a table form. Areas in square meters now instead of hectares. And there's also the current positive negative observation report. And it's because we anticipate people year over year are going to be adding overlapping polygons on top of each other. It's going to get like kind of messy. Current positive and current negative show just the most recent observation of a certain plant, like in an area. So say I created a spotted knapweed survey like across the street from my house this year, then it got treated, I went back next year, and there's no weed found, and I put a negative on top of that. If I then went to the current positive observation form and extracted all the data from it, I wouldn't get the previous year's positive observation. Like, it's discluded from the report. And so if you use that report, you're only getting like the current view of stuff on the ground without anything that's underneath it from previous years. Although I know it's the first year of using the system, so everything would be in that report still now. Yeah, maybe next slide. So I'll explain a little bit how the area is calculated quickly with a few of these screenshots. So one thing to note, if you like InvasivesBC records, like a single geometry can have multiple species. So species are only compared to the same species. So if this polygon had 4 species on it, in the spatial calculations, technically it's 4 separate polygons that are being like used in the spatial calculation. Next slide. And okay, so pretend the green is positive and the red is negative. And the red is more current. So when the area is calculated, if there's a more recent negative of the same species over top of a positive, that area isn't counted in the total area summary. And if this red covered the whole green, it would be discluded from that current positive observation report as well, but it's not completely covered, so it would still make it in. Next one. If there's a positive of the same species overlapping another positive, the area where they intersect is only counted once. So in the first one, you have two that are slightly overlapping. The area that's counted is the second polygon there. So no double counting. It doesn't matter if there's like 15 stacked on top of each other. It only counts the area once. Next one. So this is a visual example of what I was talking about before with the current positive observations. If the first one is this year, and then next year somebody goes and puts a negative on top of it, the previous positive area isn't counted in any of the area reports, and it also doesn't show up in the current positive observation report because it's covered by a more recent negative. Next one. And one more thing.
I'm sorry, I clicked the wrong muting thing, but I think we only have 3 minutes left in the, I didn't mean to mute you, Brendan, I mean it. But I think we'll have to just skip this slide just because the whole webinar is done in 3 minutes here. How come I can't turn my video back on? I don't know how to turn that back on here. But if I do want to give an opportunity for 1 or 2 questions here. Thank you so much, Brennan. We'll do a records training video as well with more detail. So what we're working on right now is getting that mobile app out. Creating a single map template, which will enable the mobile application to work on your mobile devices. Creating a single map template, which will enable that to work quickly. Providing support to users and squashing bugs. Adding the touchscreen devices and offline caching. And of course, what's coming next? We've touched on most of these things so far. After version 1 of the mobile application is released, the following items on the list to explore, develop in the coming years: completion of that public-facing map, new reports that Brennan's going to make to merge those 2 data sets, improve filters, including the multi-filter and filter outside of features, the data manager and data entry roles, and an enhanced KML uploader, as Brennan mentioned. We're also going to be streamlining the ability to view those reports coming in through our reporting app, our other public reporting app, a Naturalist, etc. in InvasivesBC. Ability to export KMLs for that recorded activity table, invasive animal forms and functions, and a variety of additional form and map enhancements. So as always, what do you do if you run into issues? Please refresh your browser and email us if you have any other concerns or questions. So I do know it's 1:59 now. Unfortunately, we may not have time for questions, but we're happy to answer if you'd like, or we can just get back to folks. What would you like to do, Megan?
Thanks, Crystal. Yeah, we can, if you want to stay on, then we can answer a few questions. If you're needing to run, because it is on time now, we can also collect the questions and send them out in an email afterwards, if you would like to spend time answering them outside of the webinar.
I can stick for a few minutes if there's a couple kind of hot questions. Otherwise, yeah, we can definitely get Brennan can answer them as well, and anybody can email us at any time at the email address that's on the screen.
Awesome, sounds good. Can you see the Q&A box for the questions, or do you want me to read them out to you?
I can not see it. Wait a minute. Yep, now I can. 3 of them.
Okay,
Okay.
perfect.
All right. So, how long does it take to provide users with access? Couple days, unless people are off sick, but not long. Usually within a few hours for most cases. We have a question that previous database managers did a roadshow for IAPP and did training in person. We absolutely have considered it for InvasiveSBC. I'm not sure whether we're going to have capacity to do that. We do have the ability to do one-on-one virtual training shows. Brennan has been doing that a lot with users. So maybe just if you're interested in a specific training workshop, let us know for how many people and what location, and then we can look at that. Is there a limit to polygon size? Yes, 50 hectares is the limit.
I'm just going to make a quick note, sorry. For anyone who's needing to get their CECs, the quiz is open and there is a link in the chat. So be sure to do that quiz. Thank you.
Yes, good reminder. Will the data be available to us when entering the info directly on the mobile app? Yes, absolutely. Every time you go to a site, you should always review historically what's happened in an area before you make your record. So yeah, you'll be able to take all that information with you. And then everything will work just as if you were online. The only difference is it just doesn't push back into the database until you go back into data. Can an individual gain access, or do they need to be from an agency? It depends on the reason for requesting access. So we might ask a few questions if you're not from an agency that would be working with invasive species. However, for the most part, yes, as long as you have a business BC ID or an IDER. Just wondering why the location needs to be hidden for some sites. Yeah, so those were for primary biocontrol agents. So when we released those very first releases in the province, those records have always been skewed for protection of those sites until those agents have established, and then the location comes off. Will InvasiveSBC data be available on IMAPP? Yes. Absolutely, we're working on that, and it should be within the next few weeks available through the BC Data Warehouse. And will the IAPP data continue to stay on IMAPP? Yeah, IMAPP, yes. It's still there. It's not going to go anywhere. Whew, I think I did all the questions.
Awesome.
I'm sorry for going over time.
No worries. Well, that was a really great presentation. So thank you, Crystal and Brennan. And thank you everyone for joining us today. We will be sending a follow-up email with the links to the Learning Center and the recording of this webinar. So you can make sure that you look it over again there if you'd like, and make sure that you complete that quiz for your CECs. And I hope all of you have a great rest of your day. Thank you.